"I can't live without a man," cried the giant widow. The rancher took her in all night. Weaver's Creek, a small settlement lost among the endless prairies, lived its own unhurried life. Time here seemed to have stood still, and its only measure was the sunrises and sunsets. However, today's dawn brought something unusual to this quiet life, disrupting the usual order. Tommy Blackwood, a young but already seasoned rancher, rode up to the Last Chance Saloon and saw something that made him freeze in the saddle. Sitting by the saloon door, leaning against the wall, was a woman. She was huge, almost like a grizzly bear. Wide shoulders, mighty arms, every muscle on which seemed to have been carved from stone. Her face, round and rosy, was bathed in tears. Not just tears, but real streams that left dirty streaks on her cheeks, mixing with the dust. She was dressed in men's clothes, a huge checkered shirt that hung on her like a sack, and worn leather pants. Broken, hoarse sobs came from her mouth. At her feet was an empty bottle of whiskey, and next to it lay a huge sledgehammer, the kind that blacksmiths usually use. This was Abigail Brown, nicknamed the Giant Widow. Abigail had recently become a widow, and her whole life seemed to have collapsed. Her husband, John Brown, was the only one who accepted her for who she was, not seeing any ugliness in her. He was a man of his word, and in their marriage, he never looked at other women. Abigail considered him her only salvation, because only he loved her for who she was. She was tall, but her husband was even taller. She was strong, but he was even stronger. And when he died, she lost not just a husband, but a man who gave her the opportunity to be herself. She was strong, but inside she was fragile. And when she lost him, her fragility turned into immeasurable sadness. "I can't live without a man," she cried out through her tears, and her voice, low and hoarse, echoed throughout the street. Tommy, seeing this, could not stand by. He was short, but he had a strong character. His face, young and tanned, had a stubble, and in his eyes, the color of a stormy sky, a kind but insightful spark shone. He was not a person who judged by appearance. He knew that deep down, Abigail was kind and sensitive. He dismounted from his horse, walked up to her, and held out his hand. "Abigail," he said, "come on, I'll take you home." She raised her tear-filled eyes to him, full of hopelessness. "I don't want to," she whispered. "I don't want to go back to that empty house." Tommy knew how she felt. He himself had recently lost his father, and it was hard for him. He understood that she needed help. He hugged her, and she, like a child, clung to him. He hugged her, trying to hold back her sobs. He was small, but his heart was huge. He was ready to do anything to help her. He hugged her and told her she wasn't alone. He told her he was here to help her, and he wasn't lying. He was a man who always helped others. He was a man who never judged. "Come on, I'll take you to my place," he said. Abigail lifted her head. "You?" she asked. "You're not afraid?" "Me? No," Tommy said. "I'm not afraid." She nodded. She took his hand, and they walked. She felt that Tommy wasn't afraid of her. He wasn't afraid of her strength. He wasn't afraid of her size. He wasn't afraid of her sadness. He just wanted to help her. He didn't know who she was, but he knew she needed help. He was ready to do anything to help her. They left. Tommy was leading her to his ranch, but at that moment, they ran into a problem. Bill Coyote Stevenson, a local bully who always picked on the weak, appeared in front of them. He was tall, thin, with a long face on which a nasty grin always wandered. Seeing Abigail, he laughed. "What a sight," he shouted. "The giantess is crying for her hubby." "What? He couldn't hold you." Abigail, hearing this, trembled with rage. She couldn't take it anymore. She picked up her sledgehammer, which was so big that she could only lift it with difficulty. She rushed at Bill, but Tommy stopped her. "Don't, Abigail," he said. "Don't. It's not worth it." She stopped. She looked at Tommy, and then at Bill. She felt that if she hit him, she would be like him. She didn't want to be like that. She wanted to be like her husband. She wanted to be kind. She wanted to be strong, but kind. Bill, seeing that she had stopped, laughed even louder. He didn't know that Abigail could have killed him. He didn't know that she was stronger than him. He just thought she was weak because she was crying. He was wrong. She was strong, but her strength was in her heart. Tommy, looking at Bill, said, "Get lost, Bill." Bill, seeing the determination in Tommy's eyes, backed away. He knew that Tommy wasn't afraid of him. He knew that Tommy wasn't afraid of death. And he knew that Tommy was ready to defend Abigail. He left, but hatred burned in his eyes. He promised to come back when Tommy wasn't around. Abigail, looking at the departing Bill, felt pain. She didn't want to be like that. She didn't want to be strong if it meant being evil. She wanted to be strong, but kind. She wanted to be like her husband. Tommy took her hand. "Let's go," he said. "We need to leave." She nodded. They left. They left, but fear remained in their hearts. Fear of what awaited them. Fear of what they might lose. They knew they had to be strong. They knew they had to be together. But they didn't know what awaited them. They didn't know what they would have to go through to be together. The night at Tommy Blackwood's ranch was cold and silent. In the hut, smelling of hay and leather saddles, a heavy silence reigned. The basic furniture, a rough wooden table, a couple of chairs, and a bed with a blanket hastily thrown on it seemed to be part of this emptiness. Abigail sat on a chair, staring at a cup of steaming tea that Tommy had made for her. Her mighty shoulders were slumped, and the tears she had held back for so long began to flow down her cheeks again. It seemed that along with them, life itself was flowing out of her. Tommy silently watched her, his heart aching with pain. He saw not just a woman, but a huge, wounded soul that had lost everything that mattered to her. He understood that he couldn't just leave her. "Why?" she finally asked, her voice a hoarse whisper. "Why did my husband die?" Tommy didn't answer. He knew the question wasn't for him, but for fate, for God. "He was so strong," she continued, "so big. He was the only one who was never afraid of me. And now I'm alone. I don't know how to live. I don't know how to be strong. I don't know how to be a woman." She spoke with such desperate sincerity that Tommy felt his own sadness intertwined with hers. He couldn't understand why so much pain was concentrated in one person. She was like a living embodiment of grief, and he felt that this pain could consume them both. Suddenly, the door burst open. Jackson Randall, Tommy's neighbor, a short, plump man who was always minding his own business and never interfering in others, stood on the threshold. He saw Abigail and froze, his eyes widening in surprise. "Tommy, what's going on here?" His voice sounded frightened. "Nothing, Jackson," Tommy replied. "I just helped her." "Helped?" Jackson glanced at Abigail, her tear-streaked face, her huge hands clutching the cup. "Helped? Don't you know who she is? She's the giant widow. She brings bad luck. Everyone who was with her died. Her husband was the only one who wasn't afraid of her, and now he's dead." Jackson's words, like sharp daggers, pierced Abigail's heart. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed even harder. Tommy, seeing her reaction, felt anger rise in him. "Get out, Jackson," he said, his voice becoming firm. "Get out before I do something you'll regret." Jackson, frightened, hurriedly left. Abigail, not raising her head, whispered, "He's right, it's my fault, I bring bad luck." "No," Tommy said firmly. He walked up to her, squatted down, and took her hands. "It's not your fault. Your husband's death was an accident. Don't listen to anyone. You don't bring bad luck. You are a person who needs help." Her eyes, full of sadness, met his eyes, full of determination. For the first time in a long time, she felt that someone believed in her, not because she was strong, but because she was a person. Tommy, looking at her, understood that she was not just a huge woman, she was a huge heart that needed protection. He stayed with her all night. He sat across from her, telling stories about his ranch, about his horses, about his life. He talked about how hard it was to be alone, how important it was to have someone who understood you. He didn't try to comfort her, he just was there. He didn't try to solve her problems, he just listened. And in that silence, in that quietness, Abigail felt alive. She felt like a person who had a right to happiness. When dawn broke, Abigail got up. Her eyes, still swollen from tears, were no longer empty. A spark, a small glimmer of hope, had appeared in them. She walked over to the table where her sledgehammer lay. She picked it up, and her face, which had been so sad, became determined. "I can't live without a man," she repeated, but this time her voice was firm. "But I can live. I can be strong. I can be happy. I can be a woman." She turned to Tommy. "Thank you," she said. "You saved me." Tommy smiled. He didn't know what to do next, but he knew he had to be with her. He knew he had to help her. He knew he had to be her protection, her support, her hope. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. Tommy walked over and opened it. Standing on the threshold was Sheriff Rawlings, a formidable and determined man, known for his justice. He was accompanied by two of his deputies. "Tommy Blackwood," the sheriff said, "I have a warrant for your arrest." Tommy froze. He couldn't understand what was happening. "For what?" he asked. "For harboring a criminal," the sheriff said. "For harboring the giant widow. She must be sent to the asylum." Abigail, hearing this, felt her heart stop. She didn't know what awaited her. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know what she might lose. She didn't know that her life, which had just begun to revive, was once again in danger. The news that Sheriff Rawlings had come to arrest Abigail spread through Weaver's Creek like a wildfire. People immediately began to gather at Tommy Blackwood's ranch. They stood at a respectful distance, but their curious and sometimes malicious glances were more eloquent than any words. Tommy, caught between the sheriff and Abigail, felt the rising tension. He was alone against everyone. "I can't hand her over to you, Sheriff," Tommy said firmly. "She's not crazy. She just needs help." Sheriff Rawlings, a tall, strong man with piercing eyes, did not back down. "Son, I respect your kindness, but the law is the law. Her place is in an asylum. It's for her own good. She is dangerous to herself and to others. Dangerous." Abigail's voice, which had been quiet and broken, suddenly became loud and clear, like a mountain stream. She came out of the hut, her huge figure, illuminated by the morning sun, seemed even larger. "You think him dangerous because I'm crying, because I'm grieving. My husband died, and it's my fault." Her words, full of pain and despair, made the crowd fall silent. The people who had come to look at the giant widow suddenly saw not a monster, but a wounded person who was simply trying to find her place in this world. Abigail walked up to the sheriff, her eyes, full of tears, looked at him reproachfully. "My husband, John, always told me that my strength is not in my hands, but in my heart. He said that I am strong because I am kind. And he was right. I don't want to be like those people who judge others by their appearance. I don't want to be like you." The sheriff, seeing her tears, felt his heart falter. He knew she was telling the truth. He knew she wasn't crazy. He knew she was just broken. He looked at Tommy, who was standing next to her, ready to defend her, and realized that Tommy was right. At that moment, Bill Coyote Stevenson appeared, with a group of his friends. He stood to the side, watching what was happening. Seeing that Abigail had not been arrested, he laughed. "Well, what now?" he shouted. "What, Sheriff? Are you afraid of her? She's just crazy. Her place is in an asylum." Sheriff Rawlings, hearing this, turned to Bill. "Shut up, Bill," he said. "I am not afraid of anyone but God. And now I am doing what I think is right." Bill, ignoring the sheriff's words, continued to taunt Abigail. "What, giantess, can't you live without a man? Do you need someone to hold your hand?" Abigail, hearing this, couldn't take it anymore. She raised her sledgehammer, and her face, which had been so sad, became full of determination. She walked up to Bill, who, seeing her anger, backed away. "You think him weak?" she asked. "You think I can't live without a man? I lived without him my whole life until I met John. He taught me that I am strong, not because I can lift a sledgehammer, but because I can love. And I can love not only a man. I can love myself. I can love my life." She walked up to Bill, her huge figure looming over him. "I won't fight you, Bill. I don't want to be like you. I want to be like John. I want to be kind," she said. She lowered the sledgehammer. Bill, frightened by her determination, ran away. He understood that she wasn't just strong, she was a tremendous force. She was the embodiment of kindness and love. He felt insignificant. He understood that his strength was only in his malice, and her strength was in her kindness. He couldn't handle her. He turned and left. The crowd watching this rose. They saw not a fight, but a lesson. A lesson that true strength is not in muscles, but in the heart. A lesson that kindness always triumphs over malice. A lesson that even the strongest people can be fragile, and the most fragile strong. Sheriff Rawlings, seeing this, realized that he was wrong. He understood that Abigail was not crazy, but simply a person who needed help. He walked up to her and held out his hand. "Forgive me, Abigail," he said. "I was wrong. You are not crazy. You are the strongest woman I have ever seen." Abigail smiled. She took his hand, and they walked. They left, but hope remained in their hearts. Hope that they could change the world. Hope that they could be happy. Hope that they could be together. But as they were leaving, they didn't notice that Bill, who had left, had returned. He stood in the shadows, his face contorted with hatred. He was ready to do anything to get revenge. He couldn't forgive Abigail for humiliating him. He couldn't forgive Tommy for protecting her. He couldn't forgive himself for being weak. He knew that he had to get revenge, and he was ready to do anything to make it happen. The tension hung in the air like a heavy, stormy smog. The departing silhouette of Bill Coyote Stevenson seemed to leave behind not just dust, but a promise of trouble. Sheriff Rawlings, despite his authority, could not restrain him, and his eyes showed concern. He knew that people like Bill didn't forgive humiliation. Tommy, intuitively sensing the danger, quickly made a decision. "Sheriff," he said, addressing Rawlings. "You were right. Abigail must be safe, but not in an asylum." The sheriff, surprised by his words, looked at him questioningly. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean, we'll take her to town," Tommy said, his voice firm. "They'll take her to the saloon, where she always worked. She'll be safe, and they'll be with her." Abigail, hearing this, felt her heart stop. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Tommy was ready to sacrifice his reputation to help her. He was ready to go against the whole town to protect her. She felt not just gratitude towards him, but deep respect. They went to town. Tommy led Abigail to the saloon, and behind them, at a respectful distance, walked Sheriff Rawlings. He couldn't arrest them, but he could protect them. He knew that Bill Stevenson wouldn't act in the open. He would act secretly, like a coyote. He would wait for the right moment to strike. They entered the saloon. The saloon was empty. Francis McCabe, seeing them, came out from behind the counter. He was surprised and worried. He knew that if they were here, it was for no good reason. "Tommy, Abigail, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice full of suspicion. "We're here to work," Abigail said. "I'm going back to work." McCabe was stunned. He couldn't believe that Abigail, whom he considered crazy, had returned. "You can't work here," he said. "You're fired. You bring bad luck." At that moment, Bill Stevenson burst into the saloon. He was drunk, and malice burned in his eyes. He saw Abigail and laughed. "Ah, giantess, you've come to work. Do you think you can hide here?" Abigail, hearing this, felt her heart stop. She knew that Bill would not back down. She knew that he would fight to the end. She knew that she had to stop him. "Bill," Tommy said firmly, "get out. Don't." Bill, ignoring Tommy, walked up to Abigail. He raised his hand to hit her. But Abigail was faster. She took his hand, and her strength seemed to come not from her muscles, but from her soul. She squeezed his hand, and he screamed in pain. He fell to his knees, his face contorted in a grimace of suffering. "You're crazy?" he yelled. Abigail, looking at him, said, "I'm not crazy. I'm just strong, and I want fight you. I want be like you." She let go of his hand. Bill, frightened, ran away. McCabe, seeing this, realized that he was wrong. He understood that Abigail was not just a woman, she was a force. She was the embodiment of kindness and strength. He walked up to her and said, "Abigail, you can work here. You can stay." Abigail, looking at him, smiled. "Thank you, Francis," she said. "He'll stay." Sheriff Rawlings, who had been watching the whole thing, walked up to Tommy and shook his hand. "You were right, Tommy," he said. "She doesn't need an asylum. She needs a home. She needs someone who understands her." Tommy smiled. He knew that they had found their home.